might as well get started. It's more or less 9 o'clock. So I'd like to start off Warpstock because, you know, what are we here for? You know, why did we all come? And this is at least the largest group of OS2 users probably in the whole continent in one room for this year anyway. And so we sort of are in a unique position. And so this session is really about sort of reflecting on that. And I want to go around the room and give each of you a chance to say, you know, what are your principal concerns about using OS2? You know, so some of us are, you know, I'm an OS2 consultant, so I use this professionally. And, you know, it's a niche kind of consultancy. There's not very many OS2 users who are well enough financed to hire a consultant. But, so it gives me a little more free time. So that's an example of, you know, where I am. My concerns, let me, thought I could advance that one. One of these. Nope. This is weird. I thought I could just advance the slides that way. Okay. Yeah, we might want to talk about what could make a better Warpstock also. That's something that we're kind of concerned about. We get smaller every year, and you know, I'm sure the base of OS2 users is shrinking, but we know from online activities that there are far more OS2 users than come to Warpstock. So if you have ideas on how we could reach out to more people at the event, that would be a very welcome thing. And so I want to go around person by person. I don't know, 3 minutes per person is about right, but it might be a little, keep it short, you know. So. That was working when I was testing it out. Okay, my name's Neil Waldhauer. I'm an OS2 consultant, and I'm presenting later in the conference about my transition from Ecom Station to Arca OS. Why did I come to Warpstock? Well, I'm secretary of the organization and speaker committee. I organize the speakers, so I felt like I should come. I also get something out of this. You know, there's not. I do meet other OS2 users in Silicon Valley at our monthly Baywork meeting, but not very many. And so it's really kind of neat to, you know, be able to see and talk to more OS2 users. I have a presentation, but I have some other ideas that, if we have time, I'd like to bring up. One of them, especially, has been on my mind for a while, and that is that we are going to a system of RPM-YUM to distribute software. And I've always been a software developer. I make a lot of software development environments, but I have not yet successfully made the software development environment from RPM-YUM. To just use RPM-YUM to install the compiler and toolkit and other pieces. And I don't, you know, I think, well, what are all the other pieces in their development environment? So I didn't have time to make a full presentation on that before the show, but you know, I'd definitely like to have some ideas and discussion around that.
You mean to install the IBM compilers? Is that what you're talking about?
To install the environment that is used to build the RPM-YUM, the things distributed by RPM-YUM. It probably won't be the IBM compilers, although if someone repackaged an IBM compiler and put it up on their RPM repository, yeah, you could certainly distribute it that way. I don't think it's been done so far, and there might be proprietary reasons not to do it. But questions to ask? Well, I guess I just asked my question. So, all right. I think I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Neil, can I ask you a question
Yeah.
about Warbay? How many users does it show up there? Because I always post the news about your Warbay, and I was wondering what do you do there?
The Baywar meeting is.
Baywar,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
yeah.
just, it's mostly a social gathering.
Okay.
But it's all OS2 users.
Okay.
And we meet in a restaurant, we have a table or two, and,
Mhm.
you know, so we're all close together.
Yeah.
And we can just talk about whatever, and sometimes it actually is OS2.
Okay.
So, you know, it's more about having the opportunity on a more recurring basis and without having to fly anywhere, or for most people not having to fly anywhere anyway. If you're visiting Silicon Valley on the fourth Tuesday? Yeah, fourth Tuesday, then, you know, feel free to drop in.
So what's the future of OS2 in the New York City subway,
Oh, okay.
if you can talk about it?
I've been supporting the New York subway since 2003 on their OS2 system. That OS2 runs the MetroCard system, and it was messy when I got there. There were a lot of problems, and so I was very busy for a couple of years, and I got it pretty much organized, and then so they didn't want to call me anymore. But then the banks intervened and said, you have to be more careful with the proprietary information around credit cards. So I was busy again for another year or two, and I had to fix some Windows programs for that also.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, things quieted down, and then the connection to the JFK airport started falling apart, and that's still a mess. And I've already been out to New York once to fix it. I don't know if it will get fixed. New York has now implemented a new payment system, new fare card payment system or something like that. And that's already in one or two stations in prototype stage. I
Will that be in
can't,
addition to the existing system, or will it be a total replacement?
it's kind of in addition to the system, but it eliminates OS2 from the picture.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
What's the underlying platform? Linux?
Android,
Android?
It's what?
Android.
Linux.
Oh.
Yeah, so that Google gets all of your information when you're your subway token.
Mhm.
Well, you know, to be fair, a lot of other organizations get all your information as well, so.
True.
Yeah, it used to be him.
So when's OS2 gonna phase out in the subways? Not for a few years?
When will it no longer be used anywhere in the subway?
Mhm.
2022
Mhm.
is the schedule. These things never slip, so that, it'll be
Sure.
gone.
The train's never late,
I'm glad you noticed they're never late. Yeah, well, it was a fun time, and they weren't interested in my Android. Well, I don't have any Android skills, so but they weren't interested in me developing any. So really, the new system is very nice. You know, the old system was very 80s kind of based, and IBM PS2s ran the whole system, and they gradually replaced them. There are still IBM PS2s running OS2 or 3 in the subway system running
Yeah,
every
good
day.
system.
They manage the stations? Is that
The
what they're
station
all-
manager, that's been upgraded to Ecom Station. You know, so pretty much everything there runs Ecom Station, except for a couple of holdout machines that they said, this is in the closet, we don't even know how to turn it on. No, there couldn't be anything wrong with it. So, oh, I guess not, okay, I won't do anything. Actually, I upgraded their software on that machine, even so, you know, well, so that's the subway. They're no longer used at all. They are using it today. There's still an OS2 machine at every single subway station, even the ones running the prototype of the new ones. The prototype, it's an Android system, so it's about this big, and it's actually on the outside of the turnstiles. And it has more, of course, processing power than the entire rest of the station.
Right.
The entire rest of the station's pretty old. So,
Interesting.
yeah, it's, heck, it probably has more power than the mainframe that was originally running the network card system, so. So let's go on, let's start at the back of the room. Greg, can you tell us, what,
Jose.
yeah.
I'm Greg Young. I've been using OS2 in some form since about 1990. First used OS2 for Windows or something like that. I don't remember what they called it. It was the thing before War 3. It came because Neil asked me to do a presentation.
Well, thanks.
I came just, to see that there really are other OS2 users more. Well, I have a presentation I give on ArcOS and on some of the software I'm supporting developing. A little tiny presentation on why you have to be patient if you want your bugs fixed. I don't really have any questions, except is there somebody here who's capable of fixing cache and FAT32, so I don't have to.
Yeah, if anyone has an answer to that, we can break right in here and answer that one right now.
That's basically it.
David Ofer. It's been a while since I really worked with OS too much, but I used to be a developer on it for many years. I worked at Prodigy Services, which used a huge amount of OS2 internally. And then I worked on a banking product that was written on OS2. And since then, nowadays I dust this laptop off once a year here, basically. I'm still kind of interested. I've been thinking of trying to work on a couple of projects on it.
I'm Phil Chu. I got introduced to OS2 way back when a friend of mine took me to IBM seminar, and they had a little video of Leonard Nimoy saying, "Time, what is time?" And I thought, this is interesting. We went down to the little area and just got a free version of OS2. I think it was Warp 3, and that's when I started using it onwards. My supervisor always thought I was in some sort of OS2 cult. There's like 10 users, with myself being in Canada, that's pretty much it. And my only claim to fame basically is I go with an ISP called nucleus.com, and when I set up with them, they're the only guys that basically put in OS2 is not supported on their website just because of me.
That's nice.
Otherwise, the only other thing I can say is I have sent 2 emails to you to help you once, and that was way back in the past.
You have any questions that,
I don't know enough to ask questions right now because
Okay.
this is my first, I guess, WebStock event.
We always get at least one newbie WarpStock attendee each year.
Okay, well,
I guess I'm the big guy.
good. Excellent. Louis?
Well, since I opened my mouth, I guess I'll continue. I'm Louis Rosenthal. I'm the managing member of ArcaNoA, and I'm sure that everyone here is familiar with ArcaOS. We managed to, by some stroke of luck and a lot of hard work, work out a deal with IBM to be able to resell OS2 as an OEM component of our operating system. And I've been an IT consultant since the late 1980s. I'm Novell certified. Novell pulled the rug out from under us, just like IBM pulled the rug out from under every OS2 user. I was at advanced technical training in Provo in 2005, and one of the instructors there said, I'm here to tell you there will not be a NetWear 7. And everyone in the room the whole room just went silent. And they said, well, you know, what is there gonna be? There's going to be SUSE Enterprise Linux. It was Linux, what do you, that was just this like little thing on the side that Novell dumped a boatload of money into buying, but we didn't think we were gonna do anything with it. And so I've sort of become accustomed to large companies pulling the rug out from under me just after I get myself established professionally and become the guy. So it's been an interesting ride with OS2, but I've been using OS2 since 2.0. I'm probably one of the last people standing on the planet who runs OS2 connected to a Novell NetWear network every day. That's pretty much it for me. I signed on to Arca sort of originally to be the financial guy, because in my other life I'm an accountant. And I ended up moving from there to project manager to just the guy who wears every other hat anyone else isn't wearing. Chief cook, bottle washer, I bust tables, you know, you name it, I'm the guy. So if there's a problem with Arca OS, it's probably my fault somewhere along the line. But I'm here, I've got a few presentations to do this year, and hopefully I can make everyone here and everyone watching online more familiar with Arca OS and how to get it up and running, and what our current limitations are for hardware, and how to work around some of those. We also get a lot of people still using DOS applications, including yours truly. And there are some interesting things that we need to do, some hoops we need to jump through in order to get DOS applications even running under OS2. The last thing I'll say is that if you have a need to run DOS applications today, interestingly enough, OS2, Arca OS, is the best platform left on the planet for running DOS applications. Because all the Windows versions have now pretty much orphaned support for 16-bit DOS applications. We have, the only way to run them is in a virtual machine, and none of our virtual machines are really optimized for running DOS as an operating system. So DOS runs very sluggishly inside a virtual machine, but our virtual DOS machine under OS2 is very well tuned and performs quite well. So there you have it. That's it for me.
Okay. John?
John Edwards, I'm president of Warpstock Corporation. I've been using OS2 or variants thereof since actually, I guess 2.0 was the first one, although I have looked at 1.3 at one point, which was interesting because not that long ago I happened to see a banking machine reboot, and it was running OS2 version 1.3, which surprised me that they haven't switched, but they hadn't. That particular bank switched, was on OS2, and then when IBM dropped OS2, the bank dropped OS2, which did me out of a job because I was helping the manager in the branch get things working for him, which I wasn't getting overly paid for it, let's put it that way. Well, I think the reason I come to Warpstock is out of interest, and that I've been going at it for so long. Although I do slip into other operating systems these days. And that's simply because of what I've been trying to do and haven't been able to do it. And the one thing I missed was, when I look back, was a lot of companies were producing software for OS2. And they've virtually vanished. And so there's no development going on that way, which is why I've been using other operating systems, which shall remain nameless other than Windows and Linux. And particularly Ubuntu version of Linux. Basically, my job this year for presenter show, I don't have anything specific other than the welcome and the wrap up. So I'm not doing any presentations this year other than what I've done. I may throw in a few little tips for people on occasion, but other than that, we'll see what happens. Questions to ask? Well, I'm not gonna get into all that.
But if you have something sort of formulated, you know, you do a lot of the organization.
Basically, the big question that I have, and it's not something that's answerable right now, is with the modern hardware that's coming out, how do we make OS2 or Ecom Station or Arca OS run on them properly? That's the biggest concern I have with it, because we just haven't kept up with drivers. And we get, well, the whole USB 2, USB 3 theme. And I know I had one computer that I was trying to install Arca OS on, and it was one of the ones that has labeled ports for USB 3 and USB 2. But when I delved into the workings, it's all USB 3 hardware that's doing it. It's just using a compatibility for USB 2. So it was ignoring me. So those are questions I have anyways.
Okay, I think we will be delving into that in future sessions, so that is a good question. Thanks.
Rep James began in '94 with Warp 3. I primarily use OS2 OSs for real-time financial trading. Why I come? To meet the people and get fired up to delve into some new testing for OS2. Items for discussion, the Unix user bin setup and config sys, USB audio drivers, and the USB stack in general, and OS4 kernel.
Okay, those are good ones. Yeah. All right, well, we'll make some time for those later in the program. Thank you. All right, this one, go right ahead.
I'm Gary Rupp, and I've been in the IT area since '74, retired in 2014. My main claim to fame is system programming, but on the mainframe side. So I was an MBS Kix DB2 system programmer, 25 years. There are little OS2, there's a Kix OS2, there's a database 2 that I was involved in. And this was setting up for the company that I had worked for. I'm also interested in running a mainframe on a PC running OS2. Running, yeah.
Oh.
Now, I have a P390, and I also have what's called an R390 on the AIX side. Okay, So, I've been trying to port something called the Hercules project. And Hercules is a mainframe emulator, and it runs on Linux, it runs on Apple, and it runs on Windows, but it does not run on OS2.
Okay.
And so I started trying to port it 2003. I came to Warpstock in 2003, where I think there was 150 attendees.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in contact with a fellow by the name of Paul from Australia, and in 2008 he put out a little package where it was like a development platform where you could try to port products from the Linux side over to OS2. He was actually successful in compiling, but he never did a release of the product. So Paul left it in someone else's hands. No one else has taken up the reins. I tried unsuccessfully in 2008 with the technology, in 2009, 2010, to port the Hercules project. And so this year, I saw that there were two items on the agenda. One of them is, I think Louis is going to present forking, a tutorial on how to fork something, open source project. And so, I've been doing it,
Okay.
but I've been unsuccessful at it. And
Okay.
so, even with Paul's stuff, and so I'm hoping to get some pointers from your presentation on how to do it properly.
My session is more along the lines of the philosophy of when to fork a
Mhm.
project,
Mhm.
but we can certainly talk individually about,
Yeah.
mechanics of porting that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, back in 2003, when I was using GCC, it would just have massive levels of errors.
Yep.
I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Then with Paul's stuff, it got to the point where, I was getting down to maybe 5 or 6 errors, but I couldn't figure out what to do
Mhm.
to fix those 5 or 6 errors. Okay, and there's very little support for doing this. So
Mhm.
you talk to people about what you're doing and they're saying, what? They're
Yeah.
looking at you as if you're stupid.
Yeah.
And yet this Hercules project runs on the 3 other platforms just beautifully.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's current too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
So
should be able to make
my
that
question
work.
about RPM Yum probably also
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
right down your alley. That's
Right.
probably your best
Because
shot.
ArcOS went with the RPM and the
Yeah.
Yum, and I need to kind of get more familiar with that because,
Yeah.
I think that's probably gonna be the way instead of using Paul's
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
That provides a VM in which to run like MVS or something?
Yeah, MVS 3.8.
And how do you get that? IBM gives it away or something, or?
Yeah, well, you go to the Hercules project, you can download a tarball of MVS 3.8.
And how many years old is that?
MVS 3.8? Oh, about 76.
From 76?
Yeah,
Wow.
1976.
Okay.
Approximately. But I love mainframe emulation, okay? And the idea is to do mainframe emulation on PC. Now, you can get a card, and I actually have these cards, but now I can't find the hardware to run, and I can't find, I'll tell you what I have. I have a 330 PC server, but it doesn't have enough memory to run ArcOS.
Okay, I think we should, devote some serious time to this, because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people interested in it.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of slots later in the program,
Mhm.
and I think we should alter the program to actually focus on this.
So, my last point is that, so besides wanting to try one more time for forking and trying to get this project, Hercules project working on OS2, one more time. I'm also looking at, trying to get a machine that has the old PCI slot, not PCIe, but
Yeah.
PCI, so that I can plug the old, thing in and actually run the P390 as delivered by IBM with the P390 drivers on ArcOS.
Okay, well,
But, I mean, that's
Great.
that's my major accomplishment if I can do that.
good, look at my presentation later.
Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah.
anyway, that's me.
Okay. Chuck?
Well, I'm Chuck McInnes. I retired from IBM in 1992, a couple of years ago. I first used OS/2, it was still in beta. That was 1988, I think. Hadn't been released to the public. I actually found my IBM OS/2 training manual in the garage the other day. It still says copyright Microsoft Corporation. So it's been a couple of years. I still run OS/2. As a matter of fact, I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't run the in-charge accounting application, because that's where I still run it, and I still do all my tax stuff off of it and everything. I did considerable work with ECS, including, I think, the biggest Rex program I ever wrote to do maintenance on it. And I come to Workstock just to meet up with the guys. I'm not looking for technical, I'm not in the tech business anymore, quite frankly. But, and I have a question to ask. This time of year, why don't we do this thing further south? I mean, it was 90 when I parked my pickup.
Yeah.
It was warm here just a couple of days ago.
But anyway, I'm glad to be here again, glad I could make it again. I've been to several work stops. Can't remember the first one, Atlanta, maybe? But I enjoy coming, and enjoy gathering together with fellows, so have a good one.
Thanks. Roy?
My name is Roy Hardy, and I work as a statistician, mathematician for the state of California in the unemployment department, which would chill the honcho's opinions. But I was there for 41 years, and I retired in July 1st, 1991. And the first year I didn't even have a home computer. People used to ask me at work, but you don't have a home computer? I says, no, I think 8 hours is enough per day. I didn't want to burn out. But after I retired in 91, then I waited about a year to buy a home computer. And in the meantime, I went to a conference. I don't recall whether it was Las Vegas, or somewhere else. Anyway, OS/2 was just about to be offered by IBM. And so when it came out, I purchased it. And I've been with it ever since. And that was 2.0, I think, which most of us seem to have started with. And I've been with it ever since. And I do all my work on it. And my main interests are compilers, particularly Fortran compilers, because that's what I use at work so much. I've played with C, but it doesn't have the as a language, but it doesn't have the flexibility that Fortran has for the kind of things I'm interested in. And most people don't know it today, and I notice in the various forums and things, there's a lot of poo-poo about Fortran being so old and not modern, etc. But the world of physics, the professional physicists, that's what most of the programs are written in, even today. And of course, the language has been upgraded a number of times. The last time was 2008, and I think there's a 2013 or something coming out by the International Standards thing. But it's very nice for mathematics, statistics, and engineering, or scientific computation, and applied math, and that kind of thing, which is what I was interested in. And I've been very pleased with it. That's what I do all my work on. And I have a PL1 compiler, IBM's. I have several C compilers. I have several Fortran compilers. And that's what I work with. And the reason I come here is to keep in contact with the latest things, whatever they may be, for better or for worse. And that's the way it is. And although I did have something with ArcOS, which completely puzzled me. About 2 weeks apart, I was on the internet, never had any problem with it, and the machine just froze dead. So I had to hand power it off, and then I couldn't boot. And the first time, I finally figured out what it was. Whatever happened on the internet, and I used the standard Firefox, it clobbered the AirBoot boot manager. So once I found that out, and then there was another boot OS2.x that was lost somehow, I don't know how. So I found that and put it all back, everything worked. And then about 2 to 3 weeks later, the machine absolutely froze. Same problem, so I went out and it wouldn't even boot. I could do nothing, nothing. And so finally what I spent a whole afternoon doing was found a way using DFC to scratch the first hard disk partially. And once that got done, then I could reformat and begin to restore everything. But it was very strange, and I have no idea what happened. My only theory is there was some kind of noise record that came through Comcast, which I use, that did something and I don't understand it. But the second time was far worse than the first time, and it took me a while to figure out how to put things back. Now, I had a USB drive attached to the machine at the time I was on the internet. And when that crash hit, I can no longer read that backup USB disk, but I can read it under Linux. So I don't know what is going on.
Yeah, I'd like to make some time to investigate that a little further.
Yeah.
In a
It was
future
very
session.
weird, and I've never had anything quite like that happen to me before. But twice in a row, about 2 or 3 weeks apart, something weird
Yeah,
is occurring.
I've been hearing of similar reports.
Oh, I see, I didn't
So,
know that.
That's why I think we could actually take a little time to talk about that later.
But I can't reproduce it.
No, no. But, you know, the fact that several people have had the same problem.
Anyways, I told
That might be-
someone, my nephew mainly, who's my transportation these days, I said, it keeps me out of mischief from wandering the dangerous streets of Sacramento. That's about it.
Thanks. Joe?
My name is Joe Suttle. I've been using OS2 since OS 2.0. I worked at a phone company, and a fellow technician and I got tired of a task switcher. I can't even remember its name, but we would be doing documentation work, remote access, and other stuff. And the only way to get between the two is to use a task switcher under DOS. He happened to have 2 copies of Windows 3.0, and IBM made an offer if you traded in your Windows, you get a discount price on OS2, and that was my introduction to OS2. Been using it probably except for the last 3 years. Got remarried, and my computer's sitting there. It still runs, and it's still on my network. That's the amazing thing. Although Windows 10 doesn't like to talk to it that well. Why did I come to Workstock? Other than the fact that I'm doing a presentation, I came to meet all of you guys, talk to some fellow OS2 users and gurus, along with Neil, who I meet occasionally at Bay Warp. That's why I'm here. I came to see you guys. Do you have something to present or show? Yes. Do you have one or more questions? Yes, I've got questions for the presenters, because some of the topics coming up, I want to know how to do that, so I can put Arca OS on a new machine that's acceptable for that. My claim to fame, I guess, in OS2 is when California Lottery started. I was working for the phone company, and they wanted an automated order entry system for lottery dealers. I wrote the program in C and C++. We provided printed reports into the sealed area. We couldn't use their network, although we had a voicemail system with IVR. we had to print separate reports that they hand delivered for supply orders because nobody could get to the lotteries network. And that was my gift to the world, and that was my last grade program. I do teach junior high and high school kids programming, how to use Windows, Office applications, but I teach programming and computer networking to high school and junior high school kids, in addition to working. So, the longer story comes later.
Well, I'm Joe Campo, probably one of the lightest users here. I started using, I work in one of the agencies downtown Washington, and again, came down in November of '89, and they gave me a desktop there in January, and it was OS2, and I kind of liked it. It was, you know, I don't know what version of it was, whether it was 1.2 or 3 or something like that. Eventually, they built the Edgar system, or using OS2, and all the financial information coming in for all the public companies was being brought over to the Edgar system, which is OS2, which is used for quite a while. I don't know what to use it. They took it off. I don't know what to use it now. But in the process, I started using OS2. I got my own PC, used it at home, and from there it developed to be a hobby. You know, and I'm an accountant. I'm not a programmer or anything like that, and I just use it. I like using it. I've used it for work up until about Arca OS. I was able to, I telework 2 days a week. I was able to run my Citrix virtual machine within a virtual machine on Ecom Station. And so I've been doing all of my telework was done basically on OS2. He probably did something that made it much more transparent, because when I tried to install it on the virtual machines on Arca OS, the Citrix system knew it and said, we don't support you, and would refuse to give me the light. You allowed me to use the light application. So, in any case, I still use it. I use it a lot. Unfortunately, I don't use it when I'm working at home, teleworking, but I do use it. I wouldn't mind trying to set up in one of the betas for the not virtual PC, the other one, VBox. But I haven't gotten far enough to do that to see how that works. And actually, I was able, I think for a while there, it may have actually been Firefox, but I was able to run the light version of Citrix on the Firefox browser within OS2, with Ecom Station, and they didn't figure it out. In case, I still use it, I still enjoy it, it's a hobby, and there's times when I have time to play with it, and there are other times when, like the last 6 months, where I'm just so so buried in work that I can't. But it gives me a chance to get out, meet those users. We had a Washington CPUG, and I used to go to the users group there, and this is something like an alternative to the users group, where I get to see people use it and people like to learn from it. So, why from Warp Stock? No, I don't have anything to present. I have questions. Probably take me time to formulate the questions, if I can do that. But it would involve mostly around this point around the drivers. I'm very interested in the USB 3. That's just holding me up moving forward on hardware. I was able to install Arca OS, great job, on a Lenovo Edge of E555 because I could turn off USB 3. I can't do it before I can do it. So that's it. Thank you.
I'm Jim O'Connor. I've been acquainted with computers since the early to mid 1980s. My first acquaintanceship was an office system, which, looking back, was a Unix-based operation on QNX, which I understand is still alive and well. But I moved into, I guess it was approximately Warp 2 when I first got acquainted, because it was a functioning operating system. And I've been attending Warp Stocks since Philadelphia, which I think was 2000. Missed one, I think, in Atlanta, but other than that, it's been a social outing, there's no question about that. It's always a privilege to be a member of a significant minority group. There's a certain amount of standing in that. And secondary to that, I think technically that the Waterloo users group is still alive and well, with John and myself communicating frequently about technical things. As recently as 2 days ago, he called me about a USB situation, and I was able to help him, which is a real privilege because John's the guru that I run to. So this is a practical application. My other reason for sticking with OS2 in many guises was the fact that my son entered the real world of earning a living, one aspect of which was working for Microsoft, and I think it was very appropriate that I could aggravate the hell out of him by sticking with OS2 and pointing out that it was still a better product than the latest rendition of Windows. Subsequently, I've drifted, I must say, I must confess, I've drifted somewhat away from OS2. At the moment, I have a ThinkPad R61 I'm rehabbing as my Arca OS machine. And I'm able to make everything work on that. The only little drawback is I have to use the Ethernet adapter thing for communicating with my network, but it works. It's a bit of a nuisance. And the biggest nuisance in that is I keep forgetting to turn on the radio. If that radio would turn on, I'd have a lot less grief and there'd be a lot less bad language when things fail to work, and recognizing that it's my own stupidity that's holding things up. It's not the fault of the program, but it's just that the radio doesn't turn on automatically. And maybe there's a fix for that, I don't know, but it's a bit of a tolerance tester. And I'm still, oh, by the way, that son I mentioned that was dedicated to Windows, well, he had the good fortune that they let him go, and he progressed to much greater heights. And I understand, now he's only slightly alluded to it, but he, in his major business world, is using something called Mac. But I don't think it's appropriate to continue aggravating him with that type of conversation. We get into much more interesting things about the big and wonderful and beautiful things he's doing, especially when he has a very important job and also 3 burgeoning teenagers in his care, and with a 16-year-old daughter he's escorting all over North America because the university headhunters have found out about her, which incidentally it's a rather unusual thing. Her claim to fame is the shot put in track and field. And a 200-pound, 6'1" girl can do a hell of a job with the shot put. And she's moving on to greater heights. There's going to be a major scholarship involvement there. So it's interesting. So I don't bother Kevin too much about his choice of computer operating systems. There are things that are really suddenly more important. But I come here because there's a special camaraderie, and there's no question about that. And there are questions. Oh yeah, I could ask questions all day, but I'm more here to listen and learn and hear what else is going on. So I appreciate the fellowship here involved. Thank you.
Thanks. Gordon? Yeah.
My name's Gordon Snyder from Toronto. How do I use OS2 and Ecom Station? Well, Firefox, PM Mail, NEPMD for editing. And I use that for web page support because I do some support for the Voice website, and Rex code development. Why did I come to Warpstock? Well, to see the people whose names I have seen in emails and on websites, and you say I see them very literally because I'm almost completely deaf and I can't hear you. So if you happen to speak to me during the weekend and I seem to be ignoring you, I'm not unfriendly, I just haven't heard you, so just make sure you get my attention. Do I have something to present or show? Maybe. I started a presentation on Rex and it's about half done, but maybe I can get enough to show something. Do I have one or more questions? Yes, I think I have found a bug in 4OS2 and I want to talk to somebody about that. So, I got into Rex on, classic Rex on a mainframe at work. And I used it there to turn a full-time job for 2 people into a part-time job for 1 person. And I've been in love with Rex ever since. It's just the mental stretcher at how to solve problems with it. And that's where I have a lot of fun. So, okay, that's it.
I still have my Rex manual. I do too. Autographed by a guy named Mike.
Awesome. Martin?
Okay. Well, my name is Martin Iturbide. I live in Ecuador, South America. I'm the news master of the OS2world.com website. Basically, I'm doing several things with OS2, but mostly is to consolidate the knowledge of the platform and put it on the public. That is the base of what I have been doing on the last years, because the dream is still there. The dream is to turn OS2 and turn the components more open source, and maybe someday have it free. But I understand that the base has to be the knowledge of how to do it. So I'm more on that area on these days. And I came to Warpstock. This is my 5th Warpstock. The first one was in St. Louis. It's my 5th consecutive Warpstock. The first one was in St. Louis that the community chipped in to brought me there. And since I stream it, the community keeps chipping in for me to keep streaming the conferences. So no Illuminati member has paid for my presence here. But if someone want to call and pay, well, there are no issues. Just call. Okay, so I'm going to present some things I think that I'm going next. And tomorrow I'm going to do on Sunday I'm going to do some short presentations.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have more to ask, but more to request that if you have some OS2 material, knowledge, articles that are printed in paper or in an old medium on diskettes or source code on diskettes, please try to move it to a most modern media, and if it can be shared, just send it to me and see if we can work out what will be the best way to share. I had good results with things from IBM asking permissions to be republished, and the lawyers just put me the condition, but keep permission. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Are you still looking for the books on a copy format or a scan format? These some of the old, I have a couple older OS2 books. I haven't compared it to your library, your electronic library. One of these days I may find some time to do that. And I think are you still accepting scanned and copied electronic versions of books?
Yes, I'm accepting everything.
Yeah, if I can find a couple moments, I was going to check.
The issue sometimes is if you can send it over to Ecuador, the shipping cost sometimes is a little bit high. And we're also checking if there is a development book. The samples, the source goes to be republished also.
I may have some user stuff, more retail stuff.
Okay.
But I have to check to see if I got it.
Yeah,
You may have it already.
Yeah, we just check it out and see if we can republish it.
I got fined a few minutes to do that one of these days. So.
But it is important if you have something on on CDs from the early 90s. You have to move it to other media because all this media is reaching the end of life. So there must be people that have they worship their OS2 CDs on their basement, and when they put it on, it doesn't work anymore. So if you think you have something unique, something that is rare and important, you need to take a backup of it because it's reaching the end of life. The magnetism on some VHS tapes, for example, I used to have some VHS tapes. When I put it down, they now look not that crisp as it used to be 10 years ago. So they're losing magnetism. So we need to move it from anything on that media needs to go to a most modern media. And in 10 years, we have to move it again and again. If we have enough life, we need to keep moving.
So would you suggest if I have to make it easy for me, if I've got I do have some older stuff, if I take it, just copy from a new CD, an old CD, new CD, that would work?
Yeah,
Okay,
that will,
all right, so
that will
would
make
work,
the
that
trick
would work,
also,
okay.
yeah. Or have it in 2 CDs or
Yeah.
hard drive and CD.
That's, yeah, I had a couple old things that I would want to.
And anything that you may have, you can also talk to me and see if it's already been published online and we can see if we can work it
I mean,
out.
what is the best thing to do to create an ISO of the CD and save the ISO somewhere?
Yeah.
Where it's not gonna go away?
Yeah, the ISO is the best way to create an exact copy of how the CD was
Right.
working. If it's a boot CD, it is better to have the ISO, having an ISO. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Page down here. Wow. Oh, that must be right button, but, okay, I think we've introduced everybody, and we have some items to go on for later sessions, so, thank you very much.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
Can I ask you a
No,
question?
you may not.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Still
we're-
your recording on cars.
So, when I used to listen to
So, so I'm next, right?
I think you're next. Do you want to use your laptop or can I?
No, your laptop.
So before I
It's
start,
still running in the missile silo down here.